I fly into sort of, well, I think they're quite rational rages.
Cate Blanchett had been Chanel's quintessential muse for years, a sophisticated figure who embodied the brand's elegance and timeless appeal.
Well, my husband, Andrew Upton and I ran the Sydney Theatre Company he ran it for 10 years almost, and this is the culmination, this is the last play he programmed.
She had graced its most prestigious campaigns and even participated in groundbreaking short films that celebrated the rich heritage of the brand. Cate's association with Chanel was not merely about the clothes, it was a partnership built on mutual respect for artistry, creativity, and legacy. However, things began to shift when Blake Lively, an emerging star with a fresh face, began to capture the limelight. Blake, known for her style and elegance, wasn't just a rising actress but a brand in herself. Her social media presence was powerful, drawing millions of followers and cementing her place as a fashion icon in the making. Chanel, always keen on evolving and staying relevant to younger generations, saw potential in Blake and began to subtly incorporate her into its campaigns.
Midlife crises.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's absurd and ridiculous. I mean, almost as absurd and ridiculous as a kind of a man who has filed for corporate bankruptcy 4 times.
At first, it seemed like a natural fit. Blake's vibrant energy contrasted well with Cate's refined persona, and Chanel began exploring how both women could represent the brand's duality, a balance between old-world glamour and new-age charisma. But over time, the balance began to shift, and it became increasingly clear that Blake wasn't content being a mere addition to the team. She was slowly positioning herself as the new face of Chanel, an icon who could rival Cate. Blake's rise at Chanel was swift but not without controversy. Behind her polished public image, there was a calculated approach to gaining power. Blake wasn't just relying on her acting talent or beauty, she understood the mechanics of influence. With her savvy PR team, she crafted an image of someone not only deeply connected with the brand but also in control of her own narrative. Blake's past had been filled with moments that were less than charming.
Nothing could be more hilarious and absurd and tragic, let's face it.
Well,
you're not there yet, but...
No.
She was known for using her platform to manipulate situations, often bending the rules to her advantage. She'd been accused of influencing casting choices on set, pushing for roles and endorsements based on her growing influence. And when it came to her relationship with Chanel, she used every opportunity to position herself at the center of attention, making sure that her face was always the first one the public saw, especially when it came to the brand's events. But her control tactics began to raise eyebrows within the fashion world. Longtime Chanel supporters and insiders began to question whether Blake was truly aligned with the values that had made the brand so legendary. It became apparent that her involvement wasn't purely about love for the art.
Collaborate with, and if I see that it's people who are, whether this is business or acting or whatever it is, where it's people who I can see that feels like that's stepping on their territory, that's not going to ultimately be a fulfilling relationship for either one of us.
It was about controlling the narrative and positioning herself as Chanel's future, often at the expense of those who had been loyal to the brand, like Cate.
When I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to fulfill.
Chanel's legacy was built on more than just clothes.
But I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted to be a part of the narrative, whether that be in the writing, in the costume design, in creating the character.
It was a reflection of a philosophy, a lifestyle of empowerment, sophistication, and timeless style. This was embodied by the iconic Coco Chanel herself, whose vision transcended fashion. Under her stewardship, the brand became a symbol of both elegance and revolution, breaking free from the constraints of traditional women's fashion. For decades, Chanel was known for its deep respect for heritage, which made the idea of abandoning its past seem almost sacrilegious. Cate Blanchett had become a representative of this legacy, not just through her association with the brand, but because of her ability to represent the values Coco Chanel had established. Her partnership with Chanel wasn't just for publicity, it was a genuine alignment of values. As the brand continued to evolve, it was clear
I've always thought Blake Lively was a pick-me, and now I have the perfect clip.
That the core message needed to resonate with both longtime fans and a younger generation. Blake Lively, however, represented a shift in that narrative. While she was undeniably charismatic, her approach to Chanel felt more transactional. Her social media-driven fame made her the perfect candidate for the brand's bid to appeal to a younger demographic, but it came at the expense of the deeper cultural and artistic legacy that Cate represented.
Why should Justin be able to release
snippets to the media without the full context. That's what she said. That's what she did. She alleges that she's a Me Too victim.
Cate Blanchett had always been a classic figure, someone whose allure wasn't manufactured, it was authentic. As a muse to Chanel, she embodied the brand's ethos in her personal style, on-screen presence, and life of the red carpet. She didn't just wear the clothes, she interpreted them, adding depth and narrative to each piece. Her campaigns were seen as more than just ads, they were artistic expressions. As Chanel's muse, Cate's involvement was not just limited to posing for the camera, she was actively involved in the creative direction of many of her campaigns, collaborating with Karl Lagerfeld, who deeply respected her talent and insight.
Being attractive doesn't preclude being intelligent.
Her association with the brand extended to major events, from the Met Gala to the brand's haute couture shows, where she often played a role beyond that of a mere guest. Cate's involvement with Chanel took a dramatic turn when she was tapped to star in a short film that was designed to celebrate the brand's storied past. The film, which was set to debut at a high-profile fashion event, was a dream project for Cate, a chance to work with Chanel's creative team and make something that honored the brand's legacy while pushing the boundaries of fashion storytelling.
As you move forward in life, what's your moral compass? What do you where does kindness and humanity sit in a really brutal world?
Written by her husband Andrew Upton, the script was deeply personal, weaving together elements of Chanel's history with a modern sensibility. Cate was excited to dive into the project, believing that it would showcase the kind of artistry and innovation that Chanel had always been known for.
As you move forward in life, what's your moral compass? What do you where does kindness and humanity sit in a really brutal world?
But as production neared, things started to take a different turn. Just weeks before the short film was set to begin filming, Chanel unexpectedly informed Cate that the project had been cancelled. She was informed that the direction of the brand had shifted and that a new vision for the short film was in play. Blake Lively, the face of the modern Chanel, was now set to replace Cate in the film. It was clear that the shift wasn't just artistic, it was about moving Chanel toward the future, which in this case meant focusing more on younger, more Instagram-savvy influencers like Blake. The abruptness of this decision left Cate reeling. Not only had the project she was deeply invested in been taken away from her, but it was also clear that Chanel was moving in a direction that she couldn't follow. Blake had managed to seize control, leveraging her influence to sideline Cate in a way that felt both personal and professional. Chanel's pivot toward Blake Lively was a direct response to the growing influence of social media. The brand, which had long been a symbol of classic luxury, saw that the younger generation was not buying into traditional marketing methods. Blake, with her massive following and relatable image, was seen as the key to unlocking the brand's future. But the direction Chanel was taking didn't sit well with many insiders. The decision to replace Cate Blanchett with Blake Lively wasn't just a reflection of changing times, it felt like a betrayal of the brand's rich history. The shift wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about what Chanel stood for. Many began to question whether the brand was selling out, sacrificing artistic integrity for the sake of Instagram fame. As Chanel's shift became more apparent, the tension between Cate and Blake became harder to ignore. Cate, known for her poise and grace, didn't engage in public feuds, but her silence spoke volumes. She kept her distance from Blake, refusing to let herself be drawn into the drama, but Blake's influence was undeniable. At Chanel's events, she was the star of the show, and Cate, once the face of the brand, was left in the shadows. It was clear that Chanel was betting on Blake's ability to resonate with a new generation, and for many, that meant sidelining the likes of Cate Blanchett, who represented a bygone era. Behind the scenes, Blake's methods of securing control became more evident. She was known for her ability to manipulate situations in her favor, whether through subtle PR moves or strategically building alliances within the industry.
So it just happens that I've tipped the balance. Sorry.
Her power within Chanel was no accident. She had carefully curated her image as not just an actress but a mogul in the making. Yet, as her reputation grew, so did the whispers about her tactics. Many within the industry began to wonder whether Blake was simply riding the coattails of others' hard work, using her influence to take over spaces that were once held by seasoned professionals. This wasn't just a battle for creative control, it was a battle for the future of Chanel itself. At a prestigious Chanel dinner, the tension tension between Cate and Blake became palpable. Cate, ever the professional, maintained her composure, but Blake's behavior couldn't be ignored. When Blake made a flippant remark about Andrew Upton's script for the short film, dismissing it as outdated and too theatrical.
So anyone who has got a voice and success in the cultural industries is suddenly marginalised or considered, their voice isn't significant or worth being part of the, popular parlance.
Right.
And they kind of handed it to the administration on Sunday night, a bunch of duffers.
It felt like a direct insult to Cate's artistic vision. The remark stung, not just because of the way it undermined Andrew's work, but because it highlighted Blake's disregard for the creative process that had made Chanel what it was. This comment sparked a rift that wasn't just professional, but deeply personal. Cate, who had always been the epitome of grace under pressure, began to question whether she could continue to support a brand that was no longer aligned with her values. Though both women continued to maintain professional appearances, the unspoken battle between them was undeniable. Cate's quiet resistance to Blake's rise was contrasted by Blake's calculated moves to solidify her position within Chanel. This wasn't just a rivalry between two actresses, it was a clash of two distinct approaches to fashion, art, and legacy. The controversy took a dark turn when the public discovered that a key line from Andrew Upton's script, which had been scrapped from the Chanel short film, appeared in the voiceover of a new Chanel commercial featuring Blake. The
idiots.
Yeah, but they're
and
not.
He gets to point and go, Hollywood's sad.
Yes, which is such a profoundly interesting thing to say.
The line was used without credit or acknowledgement, sparking outrage among fans and critics alike. The backlash was swift, with many accusing Chanel of stealing creative work and questioning Blake's role in the controversy. This wasn't just an attack on Blake, it was a direct assault on Chanel's integrity. The controversy surrounding the script theft spilled over into Chanel's highly anticipated holiday campaign, which featured Blake Lively. Fans and critics began to draw comparisons between the campaign and the stolen work. The public backlash was immense, with many calling out Chanel for prioritizing influencer-driven content over artistic value.
It's just important to get your audience aware of that as clearly as possible at the outset, so that they know where they're headed.
Instead of backing down, Cate Blanchett took a stand. Her new play, which debuted in Sydney, resonated deeply with audiences. It was a sharp commentary on the events surrounding her departure from Chanel, with the protagonist of the play serving as a thinly veiled allegory for the conflict between Cate and Blake.
There was never any personal conversation, which Cate Blanchett and I, we knew each other's family. She knew my children. Johnny Depp was that way, Tom Hanks. But Anne Hathaway never did that. Well, Blake Lively, I got the feeling when I first met her, I thought, oh no, is this another Anne Hathaway situation?
Cate's play became a quiet yet powerful statement about the dangers of losing creative integrity in favor of fleeting fame. The play was a success, cementing her position as an artist who was unwilling to compromise her values. Chanel, sensing the growing unrest and public dissatisfaction, was forced to make a decision. They realized that the path they had taken, focused on influencer-driven campaigns, was not sustainable. The brand's longtime supporters, including those within the fashion industry, began to pull away. Chanel's pivot back to authenticity was inevitable. Blake Lively, once seen as the future face of Chanel, was quietly sidelined. The brand reconnected with Cate Blanchett not just as an ambassador but as a creative partner. This marked the brand's return to its roots, a renewed focus on heritage, artistry, and the values that had made Chanel the iconic brand it was. Cate's quiet resilience in the face of the chaos was ultimately rewarded. She had remained true to herself and to the brand, becoming a symbol of artistic integrity in an industry that often prioritized instant gratification. Chanel had learned that its legacy was more important than any influencer-driven campaign.